Welcome for today's session. Today we will have the session on most significant change, which is our third last session of the Outcome Mapping Learning Communities Learning Lab webinar series that we are having. My name is Vera Blomster and I'm hosting today's session with the expert presenters Cecilia, Ruberto and Theo Nabben. So please note this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared along with the other session recordings on our bricolage sessions website, and that will be published right after the event in Sri Lanka. The Outcome Mapping Learning Lab 25 event in Sri Lanka will bring together monitoring, evaluation and learning practitioners to explore bricolage on participatory learning oriented monitoring, evaluation and learning for system change. We can imagine that most of us, or not all of us, the participants are unlikely to have knowledge of all or experience with all the relevant monitoring, evaluation and learning methods. So this is why the lab itself, it will not include the space to explain such methods. So we are delighted to have some leading experts who have generously agreed to provide introductions to a selected of methods in a series of webinars ahead of the lab. So this is today's session on most significant change. Until now, we already had explored some other methods like process tracing by Tom Aston, outcome mapping by Esther Quijoro and Julius Nyang'aga. Then we had a session on realist evaluation by Jill Westhorpe and outcome harvesting by Jeff Matthias and Michelle Jared. And then the last one was contribution analysis by Marina Apkan with Thomas Delahers. And after today, this week, we will still have two more upcoming sessions on photo voice by Tiffany Ferry and narrative inquiry and sense making by Steffi Dipes. So I hope most of you have already registered for also to those two sessions. If you haven't done it yet, you can still do it using the link that was shared to you by email earlier, but I think, is it already in the chat? Yeah. So the registration link is also in the chat. So please do register if you didn't do it yet. Okay, so you need to register individually as also for the earlier webinars. And the first three webinars are already online in this same online space. And the rest of the webinars will be there as well. The recordings for the ones who were not able to maybe join the webinars or want to have some refreshment before the lab when we soon meet in Sri Lanka. So today we will be exploring most significant change together with our guest speakers, Cecilia and Theo. So we will be having an introductory presentation on the method, and then we will have a taste of it in the breakout rooms. And of course, there will be time for questions and answers and any observations from you. And then there will have some reflection on how could we actually apply most significant change for bricolage. So please keep your audio muted while not speaking. And if you have any questions or comments, you can raise your hand or put them on the chat. So we will be observing the chat throughout the session. But let me introduce our guest speakers. So Cecilia, she discovered the most significant change approach about 10 years ago and has since applied over 10 programs several times each across both sensitive and stable contexts. Cecilia has trained dozens of most significant change practitioners around the world. And she don't think she has ever forgotten a story read or a storyteller she met. This is the methodology that it usually stays with you, according to her. And then we have Theo. He has been passionate most significant change advocate since 2006 and delivered well over 40 trainings in-house or public courses since then. After 40, he stopped counting, so I imagine there will be plenty more. His most significant change experience covers a wide range of sectors across many countries, for large multi-country donor-funded to small NGO projects. So thank you. I'm really delighted to have you both here. And over to you, please.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vera. Let's start. And I'm very, very delighted to kickstart this conversation and this session that together with Theo we prepared for you. As you already walked us through the session, I just wanted to flag out that we have prepared a kind of quite interactive sessions. There will be a breakout room, and we really invite you all to engage in the several moments for reflection and discussions. We know that many of you might have heard already used this methodology, so we're really eager to hear from you. And for who has not used it already, get curious about it, there is a manual already. We're gonna post in the chat as well to read you more about it, as we're gonna fly through only three main aspects of the most significant change. So please try to be as active as possible in the different steps and ask questions and suggestions and comments. I did post in the chat box. I don't know if you can go ahead to the poll and the Mentimeters we have in the chat box. I was curious to know how many of you have already used storytelling as a way in your as a practice in your most significant in your evaluation methodology. So if you can click on the link and then just if it works, let us know if you have used that, and then we can explore that. Let's see. If you can head to the link and see how many have been using storytelling in the MEL practice, it would be really interesting to know about it. Yay! Fantastic. So we can see many of you that have been using it. So it will be a really nice opportunity to reflect upon that. Excellent. Let's keep that going. All right. Okay, so going back to our program, we are gonna very quickly go through the structure, the framework of the most significant change, and then move into a breakout room. So the most significant change technique is a qualitative participatory monitoring evaluation technique. And instead of indicators, it uses stories. This is why it is a qualitative methodology. And the several stakeholders that are involved in throughout the methodologies or the application of the MSC, from the story collection, from the data collection until the analysis and the use, the analysis and the feedback play a really crucial role in informing decision making. That's why it's a participatory methodology. And its rigor is given by its selection panel and the feedback loops that are as a crucial part for this methodology. And also what is really important to flag it out, that is a methodology that focuses on changes, so impact at the individual organizational level that are perceived. So straight away go into the focus of impact. So that is just in a nutshell. Let's go a little bit more into the detail. Of course, right enough, I have to give the background of the storyline without going into the detail, but this is something that has been the methodology for a while out. So designed in the late 90s by Rick Davis, then of course it landed in a really nice guide that I really encourage everyone to keep it printed, even if we should never print, but keep it and read it many times. It's a pleasant guide. It's the most significant change guide by Davis and Jess Dart. Full of example and really pleasant, as I was saying, to read. I'd like to just mention the three names the most significant change had before landing into this better name. Initially, it was called the Monitoring Without Indicators. That is also give you an insight, a glimpse on the fact that there are no indicators here to play a role. It was called either impact monitoring, as we were mentioning, because it really focused on impact, and even probably less user-friendly, but very, very explicative naming was evolutionary approach to organizational learning. Because if I understand well, when it was initially utilized, was really conceptualized as a way and approach to strengthen and to weave into the organization learning. So making them organization more able to adapt and improve based on what they gain from the results. So, and then proven to be a very good approach for monitoring evaluation. So then really taken up for this task. That's why I think it's a very strong and powerful methodologies, because really it's at the end of the day leave organizations stronger themselves. If we go by book, I just wanted to flag it as well. That has been translated in so many languages. It has an active community of practice. You are all welcome to join if you're not part of it already. And another aspect that to flag it out, it is being utilized in the most complex environment, is being used by illiterate community to a very organized and structured organization, from a no-profit to public sector, health sector. So it has proven to be very suitable for very diverse structure and environments. And I was saying, especially personally, we do find it absolutely crucially useful in very volatile and complicated context and sensitive contexts.
Cecilia, I'll just mention too, not only is it translated in 13 languages now, but Rick has just put Rick Davies, the author, has put something on where AI is starting to translate things. So I think we can expect to see much more in terms of translation of the guide.
Yeah. Fantastic. So so please do look into those, and also, yes, I was saying community of practice, always welcome everyone. We have a Linktree link we can post in the chat where there are resources where you can find all links to those. Thank you, Theo. So moving quickly and then passing you soon the ball, but not just yet. I just want to flag it out that the guide that is really, really good and nice. It walks everyone through the several steps for the most significant change. The main one are the ones that we're going to cover today, that are the story collections, the selection, the story analysis, selection panel, story selections, and feedback. All the other steps are equally important and will make you appreciate more or benefit more from the most significant change. But the three main ones from which we cannot escape if we want to apply the most significant change are these three. Hence, this is where we are going to focus today in a light touch. Just to clarify how we talk about OMLC as a rigorous evaluation methodology. So I just want to make this parallel between the different steps for within an evaluation and how these are actually mirrored in the most significant change process. The data collection, so the evaluation usually starts with data collection and validation in the most significant change. Our first step is this data collection through stories, so collecting stories. In the second step is data analysis and interpretation within the evaluation, and in the most significant change, this happens through systematic interpretation of the stories, the selection panel that we will be also experiencing today. And the last step for the evaluation, that is the crucial one, is the sharing and supporting utilization of the findings. And with the most significant change happens with the feedback loops that are a crucial part of it, that also enable the utilization of the learning and the recommendation part. Other steps that, as I was saying, will make you appreciate the MSc even more, use it even to the highest potential, etc., are the quantification, secondary analysis, verification. All these aspects are discussed in the guide, and I suggest you to have a look at how this could be used or not. But now I'd like to hear from you, Theo. Why stories?
Well, okay. You're going to move. Beautiful. Thank you. So look, basically storytelling is natural in every culture. People do it all the time, and we can have short stories or long stories. So it's a way to get the message across. And I guess the key thing about stories is they can deal with the complexity. So you get the background and rich picture of the context that people came from and the difference it's made for them and why it's important for them. And people also remember stories. So just as Cecilia said, you know, you can remember lots of stories. I don't remember as many as you now, Cecilia, but I can still remember some from 2006. I don't have all the words exactly, but I've got the intent still in my head and my heart. And the nice thing about stories, they can address undiscussable things that are and deliver hard messages. They also can pick up intangible things, less tangible things that are important to people, like sense of belonging or trust. But we do know that stories are sometimes can be inaccurate. People don't always tell the everything that's in there, and sometimes I've got a friend like this. If you listen to a story from him, it's this big. So he's good at exaggerating. He doesn't let the truth get in the road of a good story. But we have a step in MSC in terms of the verification step that allows you to question stories that don't have enough detail or maybe seem to be too good to be true. I think the other thing that's not on this slide that's important for stories is they give the voice to the people you're talking to. That's really critical, particularly if it's a lived experience kind of a thing. Okay, let's move to the next one. So MSC story, it's about change. So it's most significant change. It's about a change that happened. And this is the basic structure of an MSC story. It has a beginning. So what was it like before the program came along or before the partners got involved? There might be some background and context for that individual about what their life was like. The middle bit says, what actually happened to me when I was involved in your program? What did you do that changed things for me? And then the end is the description of the change situation. Before you came along and did this work, I was lonely in my community. I got involved in an activity that you involved me in. I learned some new things. And now I think about the world differently, or I'm doing things differently. So that's the essential structure of an MSC narrative or story. It doesn't always come out in that order, but that's what you're looking for in a story. And the other key bit to do it really well is ask the storyteller, why is that story significant from them compared to all the changes that occurred in their interaction with the program? So it is about not collecting all the changes necessarily in MSC, even though you can do that if you like, but the MSC story is about a significant change, one that the person chooses to talk about. Next slide.
It's coming.
Okay. Oh, we've moved pretty quickly there.
Yeah.
I think we're moving very quickly, so we probably have a time for some discussions. I think we're moving faster than we thought. But the other key essential step, aside from getting stories of change, and so that's the point I want to make. When you get those stories of change, they are just stories of change. To call it MSC, you need to undertake a selection process. And that's really getting a panel of people together to basically look at the stories that have come and have a discussion about them. And it's a dialogue. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? So it's really about sharing different perceptions of how people involved in that panel that you invite along, how they read the story and what do they see as significant. So it's the heart of MSC. And I mentioned this because I was trained by Jess Dart, one of the co-authors of the guide. And what she always said to me, if you can be a little bit easy on story collection, but you need to be firm on selection, you need to do that. And that is about a process where you bring people together and they discuss what's most significant and why. Traditionally, in the early work of MSC, they would collect a lot of stories, and the selection process, you've moved a bit fast there, Cecilia, but that's okay.
Oh, no, sorry. No, should I go back to the previous slide?
Yeah, just go back a bit. Yeah. I wasn't on the last stop point.
Sorry.
That's okay. So when Rick Davies first did it in Bangladesh, I don't know, you would have got the figures somewhere, Cecilia, I don't worry about them too much, but they would have had hundreds and hundreds of stories collected from the grassroots, selected at regional level, maybe district level, then go up to national. So it reduces the large volume of stories to those that are widely valued in terms of the ones that get shared as they go up the ladder or up the hierarchy. And we'll demonstrate that slide later on. You can move now. Okay. So the bottom part of not the bottom part, the essential part of an MSC selection process is to have a look at a whole range of MSC stories you've got And we'll talk about how many of those you really need. But basically that group of people, which we call a panel, will sit together and go, from amongst these most significant change stories, which do we think are the most significant and why do we think that's the case? So that's the task that often people forget. And I'll give this tip right now. I speak to lots of people and I ask, oh, you've done MSc, that's great. Did you do a selection process? Oh, no, we didn't do that. Well, actually, you didn't do MSc then. All you did was collect stories of change, which is nice and good, but it's not MSc. So I think there was a question in the chat that just came up. Let me just get that. Okay, so there's one from Barbara, and I know there's one from beforehand. I'll just deal with the one from Barbara now because that's in front of me. Oh, it's just disappeared. Let me just pull it up. I'll just get them. Bang. Okay, so I'll just do, hang on, what? I've got one from
Cecilia. Do you want me to read them?
Oh, yeah, cool. That'd be good. That saves me sort of looking around. Yeah, great.
Okay.
Go.
So, if we start with Barbara's question, she asked, do you use it mostly for stories by individuals or each story as an individual's appreciation of a particular organizational story rather than stories about organizational changes?
Oh, I use it any way it suits me. So it's very flexible. A lot of cases are individual stories. Sometimes it can be changes in an organization. So it depends on what you're looking for and how wide a berth you need to get information or desire to get information about the impact of your program. So it's very flexible. It's not fixed just on individuals. It can be, it's not just about the change that's happened to me. It can be, this is the change I've seen in my organization since we've been working with you and things like that. I hope that covers that, Barbara.
Then there are other questions. Sorry.
I'd like to pick up on Birgitta's question, where she's asking if it does look for changes based on expected outcomes and intervention.
Oh, no.
Do you want to pick it up?
Oh, Let me put it this way. Do I only want to know about what I thought the program was going to go and do, or do I want to know what the program made for you, the difference it made for you? So you can narrow it if you want to, but I think you're tying one hand behind your back. I'll give an example really quickly. I did some stuff with a large poverty relief program in Zimbabwe. And we went out to the village and we said, let's ask about the most significant change. And they go, oh, what if it's not talking about us? Well, that would tell you a lot because in Zimbabwe at that time, your program is the biggest game in town. And that will give you some learning about things. Now, so you can have the choice of focusing it just on the program, or you can throw it open. If you throw it open, it gives you more background and context. Normally it is about the program, but I'm just saying it's very flexible.
And also, I think the way we do go into engage with the storytellers is really with open questions. So it is not specifically asking what's your change because of the training you attended, but is any change it's significant for you and why. So it's the type of methodology that we do, the way we capture the story with MSc is actually something that I use, even if we don't use the MSc, I do use it all the time because it's such an open kind of a way to enable discussion and presentation about the changes that allows you to open up to any potential changes that maybe wasn't really what the project was looking for, and even negative changes. So that's really suits looking at providing insights on this blind corner that we might have if we only follow project outcomes specifically and so forth.
Fantastic, Cecilia. Yeah, and look, it's up to people to define that. So MSc is a very flexible tool. It's not a cookie cutter. So you need to work out what do you want to know about.
And be ready to know that you might capture something that is not expected and then go for it. So it's really that's why if you will look at the methodology, it really starts up with having like a strong internal buy-in, because in the moment we have a story, we do have responsibility to do something about it. That's also the selection panel is it's a really crucial moment, because it's where the learning actually about the deep learning about the story takes on, and then generate that kind of a so what? So what are we gonna do about it? Should I go?
And let me just
next
say
one?
this. No, I need to say this. This is really important about how open you leave it and the framing that you have. And it can still be about the program. But what you're really asking people to do is tell you what's important for them instead of what's important for me to know about.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very empowering for people. And that's where you'll pick up positive, unexpected changes or negative ones that you need to know about and deal with.
Yeah.
You can go now, Cecilia, before I go crazy. Is there any more questions? Have we dealt with all the questions?
There are
Yes.
just to confirm, there is a question from Nasir. Does it also define change? What kind of changes are we looking for?
I think we've kind of
I think
answered
we discussed about that. So it's really, it does not define in advance. When you will get your stories, you might see that some stories talks about changes we were expecting, some others might not. I do think there is a great question from Paul, is their criteria for selecting selection panel reviewers, which I'm going to talk about it in a second. It would be important who contributes to the questions and provides the story. Yes, so the storyteller selection is a very important moment to prepare, to plan when you're planning your most significant change. So identifying from who we want to capture our story, and certainly capturing stories only from who wants to share their own stories, but also defining where to find this. So there are ways, the guide also suggests identifying, gathering stories for anyone involved or some specific groups, because we really want to learn more from about some specific component of the program, or using domain of change that are specific areas. So that's kind of identifying the storyteller. There are different techniques, but if I can tackle the poll question, that will help me in continue working around the selection panel, because this is really the exciting part, and I think even innovative. And I'd like to also to have a little bit of discussion, because you will be practicing this in your breakout room. Can I? So the selection panel, as Theo was mentioning, has these important roles. First of all, is to dialogue and discuss and select the most significant change stories, as we were saying, and the why this story was selected. And then the selection panel will provide own feedback that reflect the decision, the choices, the choice that came from the selection panel, but also will the other important role that comes together during the session, that it's crucial for as a responsibility for selection panel members, is to reflect upon all the stories and draw out the learnings and actionable recommendations to be taken in consideration. Okay, so let's spend a second more, and I'd like to really reflect on the composition of the selection panel members, and the beauty of it, how this actually generates this learning and this embedded learning from whoever is part of the selection panel. First of all, to be part of a selection panel member, you don't have to be an expert, not a subject matter expert or evaluator expert. What you really need is a commitment in willingness to learn about changes that might or might have not happened to the program. Okay, so it's a real commitment of time and energy, and put your face out there, right? So you just need people that are really willing to play a role. When the selection panel member are involved in have the role to, are involved in the review and the discussion around the stories, and have the role to make a judgment of the data they have, this qualitative data, these stories. And in doing this selection and making a judgment, selecting the one story and reasoning it around, and understanding the learnings that comes out from the stories, they are expliciting what are the values for them. What is the greatest value they do see in the story they selected, or in the other stories as well. So they are kind of giving you intelligence about what this group consider the most important or the worst that happened. So they are actually, on one side, giving you the blueprint of what we should do, because that is the best. So everyone will understand that this is a very good standard for this group. So they give you these values, but they also will give you recommendations from their perspective. So you will learn that if in the group you will involve perhaps community members, you will have insights about these community members' value, what for them is really important. And they will give you recommendations from which you have to, of course, be accountable and take in consideration. If in your panel members as staff, you will be hearing what is important really to the staff involved. What are the values from staff? If you, for example, put your head and if you, for example, have a selection panel with donors, most likely the values they might see or discuss might be very different, or the reasoning might be different. So it's very strategic how you organize this selection panel, whose voices you want to learn, which value do you want to use to then progress and make action decisions out of the learnings you gain. But on the other side, selection panel members, they themselves will say, us as a group, we say this is the best because of this and that. So they will present their own, so they themselves take an ownership, a commitment, and a kind of, they are accountable to what they are saying as a group. And it's not as easy. Sometimes it's very easy to find kind of a consensus around stories, some other times it's not. But this tension of trying to figure it out, the one story that is important, the reasoning in why is what generates this important, rigorous step for the evaluation. So a long way to say who's in the selection panel. This is something that, again, is something that should be planned. How many selection panel to do. Usually you would have a group, tell me if you have different experiences, but between the maximum 5 to 6 or 7 individuals come together and they have a bunch of stories, maybe 5 or 6. I had also panel with 8 stories, but that's a lot. And they discuss.
I'll come in on this.
Yeah?
I kind of agree with you. The way I look, other people can have selection panels with a lot of people and many, many stories. That's fine. The technique can handle that. And in the user guide, in the appendix, there's a guide how to facilitate such a large session, very structured process. I'm kind of like you, Cecilia. I like a lot of small groups. Not too many people, and it's the same as you. I think you said eight stories. It gets difficult for people to remember that, and often they split it into 2 selection processes. So I kind of like, I think the lesson I would have if you have the ability is lots of small light touches, not too many people, do it easy, and not too many stories all at once, particularly if you're doing it in an ongoing sense. But it can go either way. You just need to manage it differently. I agree with everything you say, Cecilia, except one point. You said one word, which I don't like. So I would like everyone to write the word best story down. And once you've done that, I would like you to cross it out, because it's not the best story. It's the most significant story. It has a very different connotation. It's saying what's most significant for us at this time when we look at this. What does this story tell us about the program? And I'm just going to pick up another point. My way of, and I think Cecilia is very correct, think about who's on the panel, and kind of a guide that I use is who would contribute valuable information by being on the panel and who would benefit by being on the panel, by learning things. So they are kind of things to think about. Cecilia, I don't want to slow us down. I think we're doing okay, but Richard asked an interesting question, and I can't remember all the detail about Richard, but what he said was, hey, what happens if we get MSc stories that tell us that our program's not making, it's not achieving the outcomes? I'll give you a very quick, beautiful example of that I learned from Just Start. So in Bangladesh or somewhere in the Indian subcontinent, there was a program that was working with sex workers. And they wanted the women to be powerful enough to get their men to use the appropriate contraception. Anyway, they found out that that was happening. That was beautiful. But actually, through the MSc stories, they found out that that was the result of another NGO that was working on a different thing with women, with the same women, and it was actually empowering them, and it got them to wear sandals on their feet. And what happened through that program, the women felt more normal, more dignified, and therefore had the confidence to ask their clients to use contraception. So there's a case where the MSc story brought it up from another organisation, Now, that doesn't mean what you did was failed. It's a lesson because you go, maybe we could work with that other organisation. We would amplify our impact, or we should be thinking of those things. So what I'm saying is embrace the fact that you may not get stories about what you've done, but learn from it and build in your program or make partnerships. I will stop there and we can get onto the main game if you want.
In my experience, we also discover sometimes about changes that were not really from the project's kind of a roommate, but because of that insights and also the kind of the several stories we captured, then the program has been able to re-up that and actually expand or change, tweak some of the program, trainings, component, etc., to better really focus on those changes that were considered important. So just like I think it helps really also in tweaking where it is possible straight away, if that is something that is considered very, very strong, important by the storytellers and implementers, the ones that are part of the selection panel. So we have been using also to straight away recorrect our work and expand or like redirect a bit the focus as based on the learnings.
I think we should go into the practice now.
Yeah, let's go to the practice. We prepared for you an exercise. I hope we hope it will work. Theo, would you like to?
Yeah, I will. We've got 3 stories we're going to share with you in the chat, and we're going to put you in breakout rooms. And when you're in the breakout rooms, we want people to read all 3 stories. They're all short. That's why we've selected them. You can do it 2 ways. Someone in the breakout group might go, I will read the stories, or you can share them between you. There's 3. If that becomes difficult and it's going to take you too long to work out who does it, just get in and do the job and read them yourself, right? We've only got 15 minutes. So normally it might take a little bit longer, but we are short of time. So basically everyone needs to be across the 3 stories we're giving you. And once you've done that, choose which story you think is the most significant and explain why you think that is significant based on the changes you've seen or you've heard. And that will share the values from your viewpoint about what you think is significant. But it is about listening to all the others, and you might change your mind through that process. That's why we have the dialogue. It opens up different perspectives. And the stories we're going to give you are based in Australia. They were probably the first stories that were done of MSC in Australia by Jess Dart, who's a co-author of the guide. And they're really about an agricultural project. So it was a dairy cow project. And you don't need to know all the details of that project. It's called Target 10, but really it's about grow more grass, happy cows, more milk, happy farmers. Okay, so don't get caught in the detail of it, but they're very simple. And I think just have a look at those. And what we'll ask you now to do is to go into the group. Do we need to check if anyone's got any serious questions about this, or we'll just throw them in? Maybe we'll throw them in and unpack.
Yeah, let's just confirm you can access the link. If you cannot, maybe somebody in the room can share the screen so others can read it. That would be really ideal. And if you have any problem, just let us know and we can pop into the breakout rooms. Everyone is back. How did it go? We would like to hear a little bit and finally hear, yeah, if you want to unmute yourself and let us know how did it go, the process, if you managed to read the stories, do some selection. Any observation from the group to start with?
Okay,
Barbara, what about you?
yeah. So we were from room 2, and it was Vijita, Paul, and I forgot her name. Kashmita, right. So 4 of us, we have discussed and went through all 3 stories, and we all have agreed with the first story that's turned the loss into a profit is the most significant change story here. And we have our explanations of that. We found that this story, with my explanation was it's because we work for the sustainable development, and this seems like more sustainable as they helped themselves. They learned from the intervention, and It was they practically implemented it or exercised it, and they helped each other. So it's not just a single person got benefited, but the whole community or the group was. With the second one, Vijita is a bit confused if this also, I mean, according to her, this also can be another significant change story.
Which is the
But we
second,
didn't
Sheila?
get time to get the discussion onto it.
Yeah, so I was a little split between 1 and 2, while my other group members unanimously agreed as story 1 to be the most significant one. 1, I agree,
Great.
it also looks equally significant, but I was a little split between 1 and 2.
Okay. So you felt
What
there
about
were
some other groups?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Cecilia.
Yeah, no.
Just think about
Some other groups.
what about some other groups? How was that experience from them?
Yeah, we also had quite long discussion. We very much followed the guidelines, and we came up with different stories. We selected all 3 of the stories, but then following discussion, which one is going to be the most significant, we agreed on the first story, considering, it gives us the level of change happening as a result of the program. But more importantly, because of sharing the stories, other members in the groups were also influenced. There was some kind of change in their own thinking of, what exactly they would be getting out of the program. So they were actually, in terms of considering the scale, but also seeing more concrete changes, we, agreed with the first story.
Did any other groups pick other stories and different ones?
So now report from our group.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, would you like to, or shall I continue?
You do it.
Okay, so we did have a discussion and we talked about the first story and the third story. Both have positive changes. One is, one is scaling up, one is individual using the knowledge agency and so on and so forth. But we thought the most important story, significant, was story number 2. Depending upon where you're coming from, if I'm running a program, I want to know what is it that didn't work well. And we also looked into that story a little bit in depth. And the first sentence of why do you think this is a significant change is farmers have to be confident to carry the practice change through difficult seasons was a teller. And that the messages that were provided by the project perhaps didn't have it. We also looked at when these stories were recorded, and that story was recorded in the winter. So clearly there is something about, trying to adapt that with support with the seasons and so on and so forth. So we thought that coming from a program, from an evaluator, this would be something that would be very important for us to understand what are some of the gaps.
I love it. This is great. What about the other group? Was there another group or not, or was there just 3 groups? Okay, 3. Fantastic. I want to know, so you've told us what you've picked and why. Did anyone change their mind after listening to others? So I think we had one example of that where I was tossing up between 1 and 2 and I was comfortable moving to the second. Did anyone else change their view after listening to others talking?
Well, that happened in our group because the first selection that I had made was number 1 and Barbara made number 2. But then we discussed it and we read it again. And that's where, the first sentence, the winter, when it was recorded. So we kind of dissected those stories a little more to understand what was happening. And then we went to 2. We also realized that there are similarities between story 1 and 3, and it was the 2 that was different and telling us something that wasn't working. So we worked through it by rereading and analyzing it.
Fantastic. So a key lesson from the dialogue process, it's not about coming to a quick decision. It is about having a discussion and looking at them, putting on a different lens when you look at it and coming to a decision. So that's good. And either way is good. I'm not saying the first one that came to a consensus pretty quickly is is bad. I'm just saying it is about, let's have a look at these things. It's not about coming to a decision quickly. It is about having that dialogue and different perspectives coming out and then settling on something.
Nazir?
Yeah, we had a coincidence in a way that, like three of us read three different stories, and the stories where we read out was like the first choice for three of us. So, but anyways, following discussion, we agreed on the first story. Yeah.
That's okay.
We were successful in changing each other's minds, about the stories.
But I think it also opens up the dynamics within the group and how this happens to make sure. So, like having this group being able to be in that safe space for everyone to express and have the time to express what they do see and learn from each of the story. It's really that in a moment where it deepens down your learning, your real analysis, your judgment is really a result of such a in-depth analysis, questioning the stories. We very often have panel members saying, but is this possible, true, etc. So just bringing to the selection panel good story is also really something very important. As you bring stories that might be a little bit very diverse from one, like in length and the quality, etc., that might also kind of somehow sometimes affect the type of capacity to analyze the story, understanding the context of the stories as well. So in some cases, it might be very easy, just a moment, to do this as selection panel. The more often you do it, selection panels also feel comfortable, so they are able to do it the very first time. You might need a little bit of depending on who they are, the members, they might need a little bit of a support, facilitation, internal or external, self-facilitated. So they might be very easygoing panels and sometimes much more complex, kind of trouble discussions, but they all have to end on one story selected. So that tension to just learn from all the stories and then making justice to all the stories, but land on one is where really generated. Yes.
And I just want to add a quick point on this. So I'll tell you why those stories were selected and why we were given to you. They were selected under different domains or different categories. So of all the stories collected in Target 10, they didn't just pick, well, they may have picked one, but certainly throughout the process, they had different domains or groupings. So story number 1 was picked as the most significant in the domain of farmer decision-making. Story number 2 was picked as the most significant domain on, of on-farm practice, lessons learned, the need for one-on-one support. The last story, knowledge is power. Oh, sorry, I've mixed that up. And story number 3, knowledge is power, was selected as the most significant in the domain of other changes, because they said this is really a change about someone getting career advancement. So they had an open category that could handle anything, and that was their open domain. So you can choose one out of all of them, or you might have domains which are broadly same types of stories around a theme. Let's go. A theme.
Yeah, so there are hints. Yeah.
Sorry, there are good questions in the chat, but maybe we can move on to the last part of the presentation, and then we will have more time for questions and answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it does help in going into the next part, that is the third step of the feedback. So what do we do with all these insights and with all the stories and so forth? So the feedback is really the third and last most important step, without which we don't have more significant change. So what is the feedback? So as you know, during your selection panel, you have come to a conclusion. And usually, so you might have one or several selection panels. Anyhow, what comes out of this process is a feedback, often in written terms. So that as a minimum, as a bare minimum, is presenting which story was selected by whom, as we know that the selection represents the selection panel members' thinking. So which story was selected by whom, and the reason why. This is the bare minimum. But as we know, you have now gained a lot of insights and learning. So you can have more elements in this feedback. So you can focus on just the selected stories or all the stories, depending on how you organize your feedback note. And also, by the way, we usually have it in a feedback, in a written form, but the feedback can be then presented and shared in a call or in a webinar or in an audio manner. So there are many different ways to provide then actually the feedback. So in your feedback, you the study selected, by whom and why, but you can also, most welcoming, including the learning from all the stories and organizing. Maybe there are some common trends, a couple common patterns, what you learn from the story, also what was missing, maybe some of these learnings, that what you didn't learn from the story, maybe you were looking for something, but also most importantly, recommendations that the group has in the light of the discussion you had during the selection panel. So what recommendation you can give based on the learning you gain from the stories. So that is, in a nutshell, that insights that the power of the selection panel member, because you are actually now coming into some recommendation and learning that can be used so by so many others. So that's why the feedback is really, let's say, filling the gaps between the different entities involved in the program implementation, for example. It can, and a last note as well, we found it useful, especially because we often in the panel members, selection members, we have program implementers themselves. They also provide insights on their commitment, what can be, they themselves think they could do more, etc. But this is really much depending on the facilitation and how this comes out from the selection panel members. So that's this feedback, and I just wanted to flag it out, and that was a kind of a point for discussion with Theo, is by books in the best case scenario should go back to your storyteller, because they are the one that gave you the story that becomes so precious to you. So the best case scenario, where actually I personally take it as a personal thrive, is you share your feedback. That might be not a written report, because maybe the benefit storyteller don't read the report, but you share it back. You give it a call, etc. You explain that this story counted, and this is what we learn and what we are aiming at. So you provide your feedback to the storyteller in the best case scenario, but definitely you want to share your feedback with anyone who can do something about it with this learning. I don't know, I'll pause here, Theo, if you want to come in on anything on that, or I'll go for the next slide.
I would just, and I agree 100% with Cecilia, but in some cases, and we'll look at this in a minute when we have another slide about using it in evaluation, it's not always practical to get it back, but so feedback can occur in other ways, and sometimes it might be focused also on team members so that they change how they work in the program, or representatives of stakeholder groups. So you're not always able to get it back to the individual storyteller, but there is a requirement to try and get feedback in some way that works. But I would agree 100% with Cecilia in terms of honouring where you can the stories that people have shared. Let's move, I think.
Yeah, so this feedback is really generating this bottom-up, top-down, and type of dialogue and discussions and knowledge that is really kind of a bridging communication gaps that might be between, of course, project participants, staff, donors, headquarters, etc. So it just really generates this knowledge and understand, like depth understanding of collective judgment made by these groups that were part of the stakeholder of the selection panel members. So as I was saying, is fill communication gaps and understanding collective judgment, improve project focus, because definitely the feedback note with the most significant change story and the reason why will be a blueprint of what should be done more of or less of as well. So it's very kind of helpful for the project implementation, and really value people that have invested their effort or in sharing the story or making judgment of the stories, and generate that accountability. So that strong ties with everyone that has been part of the process. Theo.
Okay. Look, we've been naughty and we've talked a lot, Cecilia, because we're so excited and motivated about this. And Vera has told me we need to move on quickly earlier on, and I ignored her. But this is in the book, right? So I'm not going to go on this too much, but it shows that the stories go up to selection levels, and typically from the selection level, you give feedback down to the storytellers. And there's a lot about that in the document, in the user guide, about how that fits very well in a hierarchy or structure where you're monitoring stories over time and you've got different levels. Let's move to the next slide, because that's well documented. This is an example of how feedback occurs in an evaluation. So in an evaluation, it's not the regular collection and selection process over time. It's a big collection in a one-off hit. And basically the feedback mechanism is usually some large stakeholder workshop where everyone looks at that stories at that one time, makes a selection process and shares their reasons and feedback in that one hit, in that one workshop. So there are different ways to give feedback, and we won't go through all of those ways either. I'm just talking about those two different structures. I think my sense is let's move, because we are a little bit behind. And this is really just saying that MSc is not about the average. It looks for the most significant, really good, really not so good. And the idea is that you learn from that and learn from the extremes. Having said that, MSc stories could be quite common, but they're not the average in the traditional sense that we would have in a survey where we want to get an average and everyone says the same thing. So it has a weakness. And that's why we always say in MSc, for an evaluation in particular, use it with other techniques, like you probably should with most other things anyway. Let's move. Okay, I think we're short of time, so I'm just going to say MSc is very useful for complexity-aware monitoring and evaluation, where we're not really sure exactly how the intervention might work or what changes that might occur, or if different groups of stakeholders and people have different perspectives about what's important. So I think people can look at that. I think it's very useful for adaptive management by getting those different perspectives and seeing what works. I think let's just move on. I'm kind of sensitive about our time now, Cecilia. It's something I'm not really good at normally. So if we summarise, it's got a good formative technique. It's a very useful technique for learning and improvement. You can use it early in an evaluation to inform different lines of inquiry. We're getting some new changes. Do we need to survey this and see if this is more common because it wasn't in our program plan? It could also inform the development of your theory of change or program logic. We are getting different outcomes that we thought when we were sitting in Brussels writing our wonderful program design. And I guess the other key thing is it humanises those outcomes. So it's very complementary to the indicators that we normally would have in the data sets. I think a key thing, powerful learning effect for all actors involved in it throughout the process. So really good for organisational learning. And I guess the key point is it works very well with other techniques. So let's move to bricolage.
Yes, we have one more activity for you. This time is to think on your own individually. So you have a couple of 2-3 minutes. I know we went through this methodology quite quickly, but we would like to challenge you to reflect on now having a sense of the different moments, the collections, the selection, the feedback. So how would you bricolage the most significant change with other methodologies or techniques or tools you know. So I will put up a slide with a cozy fireplace and sounds, and just start typing on the chat box, but don't press send just yet. So just type down the 1 or 2 ideas you do have, and then whenever we finish, I will ask you to click on send, so then we can have kind of a cascade of ideas and then go through it a moment in a collective reflection around these. And then we'll also, of course, clearly take out other questions. Does it make sense? So the slide, I hope it works. Yeah. Can you hear the sound? Can you hear the sound?
Yes, we do.
Take a couple of minutes, put down some ideas, and then. So if you have written something in the chat box, please, oopsie, sorry. Just click on send now, and then you can add, let's see what we have. Maybe I can stop sharing the screen so you can see each other for a second. Let's see. Okay. Oh, wow. Discussion on bricolage. There could be more MSc stories if they fit in different domains. Okay, that's what's Theo's. MSc, Nazir saying MSc can be used with quantitative methods to humanize the data and quantitative achievements. The stories help making sense of the quantitative measures. Definitely true. You can have a selection of panel conversation with a range of outcome harvested. I love it. I love it. In order to discuss which the group consider most significant, assuming it was a diverse group of stakeholders involved in the initiative. This could help the group appreciate the different interests and perspective of different stakeholders and how, why should I maybe you wanted to read it. Sorry for that. And value those in the program. I think this is brilliant. Should I keep on reading or would you like to read your own?
Keep going.
This is brilliant, Barbara. I think that's going to provide such an interesting perspective and deepen learning from outcome statements. So now, would you like to share yourself or should I read it?
Maybe. So I'm saying MSc light approach because it was combined with others. MSc takes quite a lot of time and it has to be, go from one level to the other. But considering what I had, I used a feminist framework, PRA tools, and combined it with the MSc. And it's very important what question you ask when you start with the MSc. And that's what I learned. And I've also used MSc Light again with both UFE and outcome mapping in evaluation exploring masculinities, because again, it was uncharted territories and we didn't know exactly what we were looking for. And so we use this just to understand, what are people experiencing? What are they changing? And we used, again, a lot of PRA tools and I've used this in other places as well. I just mentioned two. And I find the expression of these changes, especially when I worked with adolescents, is very useful. Expressing these stories in a PRA tool.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else like to share? I think we have lots of outcome mapping, progress markers. I would bricolage MSc with contribution analysis. Paul, would you like to share any? What's your idea behind? Paul? Perhaps significant instances of policy impact combine outcome harvesting and MSc. Yes, I do think that I've been, for example, personally as well, connected some of the most significant change stories and translated them in outcome statement, not just because they reflect on some of the changes we capture from organizations. So just to go back, we can capture individual stories, group stories, organization stories, et cetera, et cetera. So depending on what you are designing and where you want to capture the story. But also because we realize that very often donors don't really deal with stories. They don't really want to read stories. And so then that's why we had to reorganize and validate and further develop it. So then they were considered much more reliable and informative for external perspectives. And Theo.
I want to say one point. So I really, it hits my button when I hear that MSc is resource intensive and a lot of work. It can be very light. It is really up to you in how you design it. And as I signal with the evaluation, you don't need to have lots of levels over many times. You can do it in a one-off hit when you're collecting normal data in an evaluation. So your MSc story is just another question that you ask in the interview process. So the difference is it's another question with some data, and the difference is the selection panel time. So if you have small selection panels and you don't collect hundreds of stories, but maybe 20 stories, you have a selection panel to deal with them. So that's a little bit more time than sending a survey out, but what do you get from it? So I just got to make this point because I see it copied hundreds of times when people write MSc reports, because all they've done is copied what's in the MSc user guide. And if you know where that comes from in the MSc user guide, it was a particular study done in Laos where a huge input in terms of training everyone, bringing everyone together, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just saying it's horses for courses in terms of how complicated and resource heavy you make it.
But also consumption, I mean, like every participatory methodology, it's
well, it's always a bit more.
It's not consuming, is actually a benefit, investing the time in reflection.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's actually is the opposite, how this is
100%. So
moment for reflection that very often, unfortunately, there is no, because everyone is so tired in implementing, and we often forget the voice of our implementers and other stakeholders. So you actually generate a space for them.
So it's more intensive than a lousy little server that's knocked out on SurveyMonkey really quickly that doesn't tell you much.
Everyone hates SurveyMonkey, but everyone loves to tell you a story. And that's, I think, we thought we would have been on time, but we are really late on time. So I did put a last poll for you. And I don't know where, Richard, should we...
Yes, sorry, Cecilia, I think the poll you put, it's the first one. So it's not for the... It's about... It's the same. Have you ever used SoReturn?
Okay, sorry.
So please share the other one. And otherwise, we have a couple of more minutes to go. So maybe it's time to wrap up with the final points you want to make before finishing the session.
You asking us, or what are you saying, Vera?
I think there is a very good conversation going on in the chat, but I think we don't have time to cover it all. But maybe if you are seeing something really outstanding that you would still want to raise, there is time for one more point. Yeah.
I think there are big benefits for storytellers to be able to tell you what's important for them. That's very empowering for people. And a benefit for the people interviewing them is the connections you make with people. And for staff or other key players to discuss MSc stories, it helps you not only hear the good things you're doing, but focus on outcomes, as opposed to focus on being busy doing the things I have to do because they're in the work plan. You might have something else, Cecilia.
Well, I do think that also has very nice externalities, like having brilliant communication pieces that can be used if that is allowed by storytellers and others. So often it's like is a very positive voice out straight away. Yeah, and then personally, I do think that is just generating that commitment that we all, I think, thrive for, but we can actually action. So yeah, I think I really encourage everyone. I think we have a link for several resources, and I'll put here. Please to go through the manual and experiment as much as possible. And it's great that many of you have been using it. I don't think that every time I use it in the same way. There's so many different ways to apply it. And it's so beautiful that can be integrated into evaluation, into project design, to look outside, inside. It's such a adaptive tool that yeah, and join the community of practice, that's for sure. I really appreciate the time and opportunity, Richard and Vera, for sharing a little bit about that. We are very excited about.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good discussions.
Thank you so much, Cecilia and Theo. It was really inspiring, and I'm seeing a lot of conversation going on in the chat. So I hope we have an opportunity to dig deeper when we meet in Sri Lanka soon. And yeah, there was already the link to the further resources shared, and the slides from today's presentation will be shared later on to all the participants. So thank you all for this active participation, and looking forward to see you on the upcoming webinar tomorrow.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.